Outrage tonight over the beating of former Border Patrol agent Ignacio Ramos. Ramos was assaulted in federal prison Saturday evening by a group of men. His family is simply devastated. Lawmakers are angry and outraged, and the Bush administration is ignoring pleas for justice. Casey Wyan reports.
Monica Ramos expected a phone call Monday to celebrate her husband's birthday. But when former Border Patrol agent Ignacio Ramos called from prison, where he's serving an 11-year sentence for shooting and wounding an illegal alien Mexican drug smuggler, this is what she heard.
Monica, he says, they got me good. And I said, what are you talking about? He told me that he had been beaten up on Saturday night. I said, you were beaten up? And he just said, yes, I was.
After watching an episode of America's Most Wanted focusing on his case, Ramos went to bed in his cubicle at the low-security facility in Yazoo City, Mississippi.
At about 10 o'clock, he was awoken to stomping of, they were wearing steel-toe boots. He could hear them running into his cubicle. They just repeatedly kicked him and cursed at him in Spanish, calling him la migra, dale, dale, you know, give it to him, give it to him. And he said he couldn't move. He was outnumbered.
A prison spokesman confirms Ramos reported the assault and sustained what the prison calls minor bruises and abrasions. Ramos has since been transferred to a special housing unit away from the general prison population, while the assault is under investigation. About 20% of inmates in federal prisons are illegal aliens. If those numbers hold true for the Yazoo City facility, about 350 illegal aliens, plus an unknown number of drug dealers, were sharing space with a former Border Patrol agent convicted of shooting an illegal alien drug smuggler. For weeks, lawmakers have warned that Ramos and fellow agent Jose Compean would be in danger if sent to prison.
Saying "I told you so" doesn't help anybody. It certainly doesn't help the family. It doesn't help Mr. Ramos. All you can do is put this on the weight. Add to the weight of the things that you've actually given the White House already as for reasons why they should be pardoned.
We want to be careful about issuing pardons, and we're trying to be careful about the facts, which is why the Department of Justice is in the process of trying to get full transcripts of the trial of agents Compean and Ramos, so you and everybody else who are willing to ask questions about this will be armed with facts.
Congressman Duncan Hunter wrote President Bush Tuesday demanding an investigation into the attack and consequences for Bureau of Prisons officials who failed to protect former agent Ramos. One factor, Ramos chose to be housed with the general prison population instead of in protective custody so he could maintain regular contact with his family. Monica Ramos' wife also says she and her husband believed he would be housed with non-violent offenders. Obviously, that turned out not to be the case, Lou.
And we should point out that he made that choice before being sent to this prison.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Casey. Casey Wyan. Joining me now with more on this case is our senior legal analyst and former prosecutor, Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey, thanks for being here, and let's go through this. Let's start with the fact that federal officials put him into a general population with the very people that he was defending the country against. Known, convicted, drug smugglers, illegal aliens. I mean, what in the world is going on?
It's dangerous to be a law enforcement official in prison. That's something everyone knows. Unfortunately, they have some experience with that. But the prisoners themselves have a difficult decision to make, because do they take the risk in general population, or do they live segregated, which is a very difficult existence in and of itself?
Well, let's go to a number of other issues, because we had a number of congressmen warning that precisely this would happen. It has happened. We have got, at this point, a tepid response, at best, from the administration. Let's go to some of the facts. One, because White House Press Secretary Tony Snow said, we're waiting for full transcripts so that we'll all be armed with the facts. I'm sure that if Mr. Snow would be so kind, he could watch this broadcast and learn a lot of the facts. And by the way, that prosecution was made by the executive branch's Justice Department, so if he wanted facts, the president could have them instantaneously. Why in the world are we waiting on a transcript nearly a year after the end of the trial?
This is bizarre. Perhaps not a phrase we want to use today, but it is not rocket science to produce transcripts. Every trial has a court reporter.
Right.
You can't have an appeal before you have the full transcript. I mean, it's simply inexcusable not to have transcripts this late after a trial.
10 months later, appeal is being held up, the effectiveness of it. The fact is that the public doesn't have access to that. We don't have access to it. We can't even get it through freedom of information or any other way, because this idiotic system will not give us the transcript of a trial that is so controversial.
Well, and you know, the justice system stops in its tracks because an appeals court can't evaluate a trial until they can read what happened. So it is totally unexpected. I've never seen this long for a transcript.
Well, let's go to a couple of other issues. These men are in prison. Ignacio Ramos paying a price today or over the weekend. Why in the world aren't these men free on bail?
The way judges look at the question of bail in general is they look at risk of flight and danger to the community. Clearly, under those two areas, both agents are not risk. They're not going to go out hurt anybody else, and they are rooted in the community. The problem is they are already sentenced to long sentences, and in those circumstances, judges feel there is a presumption against bail pending appeal. This was a close one, and they lost out. Absolutely.
And let's go to the issue of the fact that part of this is the request for a hearing because 3 jurors said they were coerced by the foreman in this trial to come to their decision. Why no hearing? Why no further exploration?
Well, that's a lot of jurors to feel coerced,
right.
to have potential juror misconduct. You know, just because jurors say that they felt coerced, that's no guarantee that a trial will be overturned. But it does seem like it's grounds for a hearing, but you can't have a hearing until you have a transcript.
And so all of this is working very, very neatly and conveniently from the prosecution standpoint and from a very controversial prosecution standpoint against the interest of Ignacio Ramos and Jose Capian.
They're locked up. The Justice Department is won, so they're in no hurry to resolve this.
And apparently Tony Snow at the White House thinks the world is fools, suggesting that everybody just continue to wait for a transcript. The arrogance of the U.S. Justice Department, the U.S. Attorney, in this case Johnny Sutton, in the way in which they have come forward, not telling the facts. One of the facts that we should go through. They have said that they had no choice but to give this drug smuggler immunity to testify. And they have not explained why they took the word of a drug smuggler and an illegal alien over that of 2 sworn law officers. In point of fact, the drug smuggler was granted immunity, to be very precise, I'm going to put on my glasses here, Jeffrey, on March 16th, 2005. According to the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General memo, the smuggler admitted to a Border Patrol agent sometime on or before March 10th, 6 days before that immunity was granted, that he was smuggling a load of marijuana on the day he was shot. And quote, that the smuggler's friends, ostensibly drug cartel members, were considering putting together a hunting party and go shoot some BP agents.
What they mean by forced to give them immunity is they had to give him immunity in order to make him a witness. They didn't have to use him as a witness. They didn't have to bring the case. If they wanted to bring the case and if they wanted to use him as a witness, then they had to give him immunity because he was taking the Fifth. And given all the criminal activity he was involved in, he was well advised to take the Fifth.
But 6 days before they gave him immunity, he admitted to a Border Patrol agent that he was unlawfully transporting illegal drugs.
This is why prosecutors have so much power, because no matter what kind of criminal activity is admitted by someone, they can give immunity and wash all those sins away if they think the prosecution is important enough. And apparently they thought this one was.
Partner, let me just ask you, as a former prosecutor, a bright and capable lawyer, as well as our senior legal analyst, does this prosecution make one whit of sense to you?
It's one of the most unusual prosecutions I've ever seen. On these circumstances, in these facts, I am baffled why this case was brought, but you know, a jury came back with a guilty verdict, and and that's very tough to get overturned. I mean, whether an appeal or pardon, the chances are slim.
It's incredible. It's one of the reasons Capitol Hill and most of the country I won't say most of the country, but those who know about this case are absolutely fit to be tied.
It's a tough one.
Thank you, Jeffrey Toobin. That wasn't particularly legalese. I think you were very straightforward on that. Thank you, sir.
I try to keep the legalese to a minimum.
Thank you, sir. Jeffrey Toobin, who can legalese with the best of them. Coming up next, controversy over plans to vaccinate girls with a drug that could prevent cervical cancer. We'll have that special report and the controversy that has ensued, and new legislation that could cut the threat of e-voting to our democracy.